Yeah, good morning, friends. Let's start with our daily market commentary. Now, what we see in front of us is basically S&P 500 weekly chart. Now, what happened on Friday for S&P was something very remarkable or something very different. Back of the good jobless data, the market basically gave a good upside. Now, as you are trying to target one particular level on S&P 500, it went past 2760 kind of level where the gap down and continuous resistance was maintained. So what we saw, the yesterday week ended way higher, coming to the same resistance point from where the fall had happened. So one thing is pretty much clear: there was a good up move which was seen in the entire week for S&P 500. Now we need to understand whether this move will sustain or not. First thing. Second, we need to also pan out the dates of 22nd FOMC meeting. So as we try approaching towards it, Wednesday, Thursday or so, you can find some kind of pressure again building up on S&P 500. Now, when I see the weekly chart, I agree that the uptick from 2760 has happened and it is now almost towards its prior resistance. Let us see on the daily chart, can we find the higher level of resistance for S&P. Now what I see over here, there was a continuous fall on the daily chart and then there was a continuous reversal. More than that, there was a gap up and a complete bullish candle. Now this will be the point for us to understand whether this gap gets filled or not. And if it remains above this particular point of gap point 2750, then you can see upward rally prior to FOMC. So now one thing would be clear in our minds: continuous up move have been seen. Apart from that, gap up has happened. So S&P seems to be a little bit on a stronger foothold. Okay, so coming from the global part, it remains to be stable plus positive, and that will provide good support to Nifty as well. So we'll keep an eye on this because as the FOMC starts coming closer, we need to see whether this gap gets filled or not, the gap of opening of yesterday. And if it gets filled, then we can see another downside coming back to the same levels from where it started. Okay, so let's go now and see what is happening on the Nifty front. Now, the first good point on Nifty is when we see the Nifty weekly chart, what has happened over here after the continuous falls week to week. If you see, all the week candles are red. It also touched around 10,100 or so, and then today we are having a gap up opening. Now all we need to understand on the higher side, where the selling had taken place, 10,435, the gap is also present. Whether it gets sustained over there or can it reverse from those levels or not. So on the weekly front, the week has just started, but started with a good positive note. Let us see on the daily front whether there is a good upside which is seen over here or not. Now, what I see on the Nifty front, the continuous fall was there, started going up. More than that, today it opens gap up. So for me, again, similar to S&P, the gap up point is very important, 10,300. Now Nifty cannot go below or below these levels of 10,100 or so unless today's gap up point has been filled. So 10,300 now becomes a challenging task for Nifty for downside, which will act like a very good support. And if it is able to cross that, then only you can see the downside. Now, one thing is pretty much clear on the daily front. We are seeing a continuous resistance zone around 10,600, but that's too far as of now. But if we see the current small amount of resistance can easily be seen around 10,400 or so. So this is 10,400 where the resistance has been seen. So small levels, 10,300 to 400 becomes a very good band for Nifty, whether it is able to perform on the higher side or not. So it is pretty much clear on the higher side, it can only go if it goes beyond 10,400 plus, filling the gap, and downside is only possible after 10,300 is breached. So two things are pretty much clear. Now let's go and see on the intraday front, how can Nifty perform today. Now one thing is pretty much clear. If you see, the gap up opening today was something remarkable because the gap up opening happened prior to all the resistances which were there. So yesterday there was a continuous resistance at 10,300 mark, and today it opens straight away above that. That is why I am saying this becomes a huge support going ahead for Nifty. Now second, if it starts going up, as we can see, 10,400 is the point where it can go and reach, right? So 400 to 430 is the range where the prior resistance and the gap down has happened. So that is where the resistance will come into play for intraday basis. So 100 points uptick is quite possible, 100 to 80 points on Nifty, more compared to what has already happened. So 100 points up plus 100 points is easily possible on Nifty. So that what we are trying to see or understand here on the daily front, it seems to be positive. On the intraday front, it is again positive. And now we need to understand Bank Nifty is providing support or not. What I see on the Bank Nifty front, on the weekly chart, the same gap down, continuous selling has taken place, and it has now reached almost into its support zone. So it basically touched 24,000, where a huge support zone was there, and then we got a today bounce up straight away. Now what we need to understand from Bank Nifty doesn't seem that positive compared to Nifty. So if Bank Nifty turns out to be positive for Nifty, then Nifty can basically start claiming higher levels. Now what we see on the daily front for Bank Nifty will face a lot of resistances because of the gap down opening and continuous selling. So what we see over here, the first thing, if you little bit of zoom out, so if you see over here, there is 24,558 level, which is more important. So 24,550 or 24,500 level is very important, because if it breaches, then there is a plain upside towards 25,000. So 500 points upside is equally possible in Bank Nifty, provided that this small level is being taken out, 24,500. So once 24,500 is taken out, straight away 25,000 is on the cards, right? That is how we are seeing the daily side. Now let's go and see on the hourly front, is that possible or not? Now when we saw Nifty and when we are seeing Bank Nifty, there is a difference. The gap up opening in Bank Nifty, if you see, is not above the prior resistances. It is almost towards the resistances, right? So we cannot see a bullish stance in Bank Nifty unless this particular levels are taken out. So there is a continuous resistance. So today's high around 24,500 is today's high, and second bit is 24,560 or so. So 24,500, 24,560 or 550 are the levels which needs to be taken out for Bank Nifty to reach 25,000. Right, so it is pretty much similar to Nifty, but there is a difference. The gap up opening is not above all the resistances, so there will be a huge amount of selling pressure on Bank Nifty, and it will not just fly high. Okay, so there is a difference in the structure of Nifty and Bank Nifty. So Nifty seems to be very bullish, and the structure seems to be in the best zone compared to Bank Nifty. So even on the 15 minutes chart, let us see whether Bank Nifty is trying to go up or not. So if you see over here, the 15 minutes, things become very, very clear. It opened gap up, came back down. Now it is trying to pull up. Now this is where I was trying to say all these prior resistances are there. It has to go beyond this level, number one. Second, about 24,500. Even if it goes above this, 24,550 is very, very important. Right, so it has to go beyond this level. Till then there is no rally in Bank Nifty, but at least it is trying to provide some support to Nifty. So there can be Nifty going above 10,400, so that is easily possible, but Bank Nifty structurally remains weak. Important is 24,550 for Bank Nifty. Now let's take some of the stocks. What we see on the gainers and losers list, one thing is pretty much clear. All the commodities are back again in the game. Right, so continuous selling has been seen in Tata Steel and Vedanta, one-way selling, and then you see continuous losing streaks have stopped, and a reversal has taken place of 2% right in the morning itself. Apart from that, Tech Mahindra and HCL as IT were already performing, so they are performing good. Most important, we need to understand there is a guy called as ITC, which is at the top with 3%. Now, when ITC goes up, obviously the Nifty will go up or gap up will happen on Nifty. Right, so what we see from the gaining side, there are no banks, there are steel, commodity, then there are IT pack which have been performing, and some bit of OMC. So that is what we need to understand. The only guy who is new over here on the block is ITC. So we'll try to see today ITC what's happening over there. On the losing side, when we go out and see, again SBI is losing. So there is no respite for SBI and PSU banks. Also on the other front, the losses are not much, more or less they are flat, and only there is Coal India on the block. So let's take the stocks where the new guy first of all is ITC, and then the heavyweights of Nifty. Now when I see on the ITC front on the daily chart, and this is like after slide straight away from 280 to 260 kind of zone, we are seeing some kind of revival. Okay, now when we go out and zoom out and see over here, the highs were made around 280 or so, and straight away it went down to 260. Okay, fine. Now once it goes down to 260 and it almost reached towards the low of 250 or so, today it opens with a gap up. Okay, now can we go out and be buyer on ITC? Not at all, because what we see over here, it is now entering in the resistance zone on the higher side. So max upside for ITC is around 260 to 70, right? So one more buying or uptick can come in ITC, but important one should understand, even if it goes above this, there is a huge resistance at 260 to 270 or so, and then you will have sideways movement in ITC. Important for us, if you want to enter ITC, is to wait for these levels of gap up. Okay, it will go up, it will come back down, it will try to reach the gap or basically fill the gap of 260 and then go up. Now if ITC starts performing and reach to 270 or so, it will clearly single-handedly provide support to Nifty, right? So even if Nifty other stocks are not going up, Nifty can still hold itself if ITC keeps performing, right? Since it's the one of the heavyweight stock. Apart from ITC, let's take Reliance. So Reliance was seeming to be strong, but after a good decent fall, what we saw was gap up and it was zooming higher. Now the last two candles are not, today's and yesterday's candles are not that healthy, but what we see, even Reliance has a good way on the upside because the correction has already taken place in Reliance. So you can find Reliance zooming high and also providing support to Nifty, right? So what we see, the Reliance had corrected 3 continuous days back to back, and then you had gap up opening and it zoomed itself. So there are good chances for Reliance also to zoom one more time, and then it can also provide support to Nifty. So Reliance and ITC both seeming to be bullish and have good amount of upside for providing support to Nifty. Now let's go to guys, HDFC Twins. HDFC has been going up every day. So what we see after a fall, 1 day, 2 day, and today is the 3rd day, right? So HDFC is continuously providing support, and what we see now is HDFC is at a crucial juncture because this is the higher resistance for HDFC. Okay, so one thing is pretty much clear that HDFC is zooming high, and it has already zoomed high, reached to its resistance zone of 1864 or so, but seeming to be very healthy. HDFC Bank, if I go out and see from the banking side, HDFC Bank was weak. So here it is, it was gapped down and went down almost below its crucial level. So if you go out and see, this is where the level was there, where continuous support was coming in for HDFC, and one day it went below that as well. But it took a U-turn and it is now going up, which shows some amount of strength is there in HDFC Bank. Now what we see over here today, it is gap up, so it can come up, reaching to these levels of gap which was formed at 1900 or so. So there is a clear uptick movement for HDFC Bank as well. We need to see whether it is able to go up and support on the higher side. Now, apart from other banks, we can again go back and see Kotak Bank and IndusInd Bank, which were very strong throughout this Bank Nifty downfall. Now, if you see Kotak Bank, a complete red candle, and follow-up red candles are not on the downside, they are on the sideways. So 3 days, if you see, Kotak Bank has going sideways. Okay, so one complete red candle, and now it is going sideways. Today it opens gap up, so it has a full chance to reach 1105 on the upside, right? So one red candle followed by other candles are at the same base above it, not below it, and that basically shows a good sign of positivity for Kotak Bank. So Kotak Bank 1106 is quite possible, but apart from that, it can breach and reach even 1120 or 52-week new high. So Kotak Bank seems to be very, very strong on the chart. Let's see IndusInd Bank. Can we see the same kind of setup for IndusInd or no? So when I see the IndusInd Bank, it seems to be also bullish because this is where a continuous resistance has been seen on IndusInd Bank on the higher side of 1720 or so. Okay. Now there is a difference between Kotak and IndusInd Bank. Kotak seems to be very, very strong compared to IndusInd Bank structure. But try to understand if 1720 is breached or on the higher side, even IndusInd Bank can go up one way towards 1760. So both the banks, the HDFC Bank, Kotak Bank, IndusInd Bank have good amount of upside, which is quite possible to take Bank Nifty higher. Okay, and then you have your ICICI Bank, which was not performing at all and was the biggest culprit to bring Bank Nifty down. What I see on the ICICI Bank front as well, the gap down, continuous selling took place. Now at least it filled the gap. The base of 290 is not been breached, and today again it tries to open gap up. So ICICI has undergone a huge amount of fall, and now it is trying to go sideways. So at least it is not falling. So the bleeding has stopped for Bank Nifty. So that is one more positive point from ICICI Bank. The other guy was Axis Bank. So Axis Bank had also corrected and it was providing pressure, but now let's see whether the revival is seen. Not yet. So if you see in terms of Axis Bank, you can even go out and see it's still going sideways, okay, and not positive as compared to ICICI Bank where it has stopped and it is trying to revise. But here a small downfall towards 498 or so is possible. But the important point for Axis Bank, what I see today is after a good sell-off, right? After a good sell-off, it has not breached yesterday's low or yesterday's open, which is 505. So till 505 is not breached and it is trying to maintain those levels, there won't be any pressure on Axis Bank. So this is what we are trying to see. Now when we see on the hourly chart, it's pretty much clear. Small gap up, trying to remain there, and it should not breach 503. So it might come here and then it has a full target to reach towards 520, 560 on the higher end, right? So a revival can take place even in Axis Bank. So what I am seeing from all the banks, there can be a good uptick in Bank Nifty and it can cross the resistance zone. Last is our Yes Bank. So Yes Bank has also corrected decent enough. All we need to see whether U-turn has happened or not. So when I see on the hourly chart, the upper part, Yes Bank was going down from the higher end. This is what I was saying. From 330 levels, it had come almost to 300 level, 10% down. Now we saw the revival coming in, which was quick and fast. Then the selling took place, went almost flat. Again, selling took place. Now it is going flat. So this will be a very important juncture for Yes Bank. Right now, it is not seeming to be bullish, but important is do not breach the below base of 300, and if it does not breach 300 like for Axis Bank 503, then we can see a good revival. So Axis Bank, Yes Bank and ICICI Bank are still on the sideways, or you can say need to perform for Bank Nifty to go up. But the other 3-4 banks are performing very well and they are now in a very well structured for making Bank Nifty go on the higher side. So as I said, this level is very, very important for Bank Nifty, and again it makes the same high and then it again finds some amount of selling. But what I see inside Bank Nifty, it is pretty much clear. These banks can provide good kind of upside for each of these banks. On the higher side, yes, there is some pressure, but then let's see if these banks give a good thrust. You can see Bank Nifty flying higher. Okay, so right now the same pressure is being seen on Nifty is because of Bank Nifty. Second thing, what we can go out and see is some of the stocks. Now, from the stocks point of view, important is to see Tata Steel and Vedanta. Now, why I'm looking at Tata Steel, because this is now the top gainers list. Now, this is what we are trying to see. Continuous fall has been seen in Tata Steel. So there will be some kind of revival that will happen somewhere, right? But there is not a huge upside potential which has taken place. But yes, 630 can be reached on Tata Steel. So Tata Steel seems to be little bullish right from morning, but you need to see whether it can hang on with its upper thrust or not. So some upside is still possible in Tata Steel because of the large selling has taken place. Same we can see in Vedanta and Hindalco as well. So the falls were very, very sharp. So now when we see continuous fall, but now it went sideways. See the kind of candles were basically small, going almost sideways. And this is the important point for Vedanta. The base is now being formed, and let us see whether it basically breaches these levels or not. So 303, if it is not being breached, then you clearly have a good upside, uh, quite possible, right? So that's Vedanta is now going sideways. Let's see if Hindalco is also showing the same signature or not. So Hindalco was not in the gainers list. So what I see on Hindalco, yes, now it is trying to gain itself, but not the way Vedanta is there. So what I see from Vedanta's point of view, Vedanta is way more stable compared to Hindalco. So if you see, Hindalco is already down below its prior support, right? And Hindalco is already down. Vedanta is still trying to provide support. So what we see from Hindalco is a little bit weak compared to Vedanta, but let's see whether it can go on the higher side or not. So we are trying to see some commodity playback coming up again. So that is what we need to keep in mind. So that's it for the day. Mainly the Bank Nifty and Nifty levels need to be in mind. So for Nifty, it is 10,440 or 450 kind of levels where higher resistance is there on the hourly chart. And today's low is very, very important. So if Nifty makes a new low today, then it is very dangerous because it should not make, because this is the prior resistance and it opens straight away gap up. So upper and lower bound 10,300 to 10,430. Till then, nothing can happen on Nifty. But there is more chance for him to go upside towards 10,400 if Bank Nifty provides good support. Right. So thank you very much for joining in, and tomorrow we'll join back again.